Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to Everyday Cafe. Today we're going to talk about some things, but first, I would like to talk about the coffee. Before we get to that, if any of you have questions, comments, topics, concerns that you'd like me to discuss on the show, please feel free to submit your inquiries to the show email address, everydaycafequestions@proton.me. That'll be in the description, as well as our show Discord channel, Discord server. That will be linked in the description as well. You can submit your questions anonymously, or not anonymously, whatever you prefer. If you want me to say your name, I still probably won't, just for the sake of privacy, I suppose. But please feel free to submit any questions or anything you'd like to hear me yap about on the show there. Moving on, Pete's Coffee is today's featured brew. Never had it, never tried it. Medium roast, Big Bang is what it's called. And there's a manufacturer recommended potency on the bag that I know for a fact we didn't follow, so we'll see how that tastes momentarily. I want to say it's very strong because my girlfriend made it. It's probably double the dose that's on the bag. So anyway, I'm sure it'll taste fine. It smells great. Can't wait to get involved with Pete's Coffee. Not sponsored, just curious. There's a lot to unpack with today's topic. I came across an interesting discussion about chasing your future self. Well, that was part of it, but that was the part that really stuck out. And that can be boiled down to, New Year's resolutions, for example. Many of us, myself included, start out the new year sometimes saying things like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. This is the person I'm going to be. I'm sick of doing XYZ thing. I'm going to no longer do those things. But instead, I'm putting my foot down. Today's the day. This is my year. Last year sucked. This year will not suck. And so I have this list of goals that I'm making for this year and beyond. But that's just one example of things that I think the majority of us do as it pertains to chasing a better version of ourselves, which I think is a good thing. Disclaimer, I think that's a good thing, but I think sometimes we might be missing the point. And what I mean by that is a multitude of things. I think a lot of pressure comes with saying things like that. Not that all pressure is bad, but I think chasing the dragon is another way I would put this. I think chasing the dragon can, if framed incorrectly, do more harm than good. For another example, maybe your New Year's resolution is to be a more patient person. The way I've been thinking about this, and the reason why I'm talking about it is because it was interesting to me and helped me. I'm going to take a drink of this now. Ooh. That's quite good, actually. It's very woody. Big Bang. I don't know what that's supposed to mean from a flavor perspective. Signature medium roast. A perfect tribute to Mr. Pete. I just keep picturing a cat when I say that. Mr. Pete. Vibrant, full flavored, boldly original. I'd say it is all those things. There's definitely some bitterness because it was brewed curiously strong. But it is very good. So, toast to Pete, the cat. So, for example, maybe you want to be a more patient person. Maybe that's one of your New Year's resolutions. And assuming you've defined what being more patient means, that's a very important step of this whole process, is defining what that actually means. If you say, I want to be a better person, hopefully you know what you mean by that, because that's not exactly a goal to chase, in my opinion. I digress. So you decided to be a more patient person because you view yourself as impatient. Okay. I think by doing that, you create a future self who is more patient by your definition. You have this vision of a better you that is a more patient person. And I think there comes a pressure alongside something like that where you have to maybe do XYZ thing a certain amount of times before you can be considered a more patient person. Or maybe you don't even really know what that looks like. You think you'll know when you get there. And I think a lot of times we don't break it down further than that. So now what we've done is create a future self that we almost think is just going to arrive. Like, when like it's just going to hit you and you'll be like, man, I am that person now. And in my experience, which is why this stood out to me, that has not been the case. Where you have this revelation of, oh, I've accomplished that goal. I can check that box. I feel like a different me. I don't know that I've ever actually had that feeling. But instead, to reframe that whole thing, if your goal is to be a more patient person, then let's say the next interaction you have where you would typically respond in the way you don't want to respond now because you've chosen to change, and you choose patience in that moment. You respond differently. You make a different decision than you did before. I'm painting with a broom here a little bit, but I think you could say that you've accomplished that goal in that moment. You've simultaneously created the goal, accomplished the goal, and become the goal all at once in the present moment, because we can't live in the future, wherever that new future self we think is waiting for us, and we also don't live in the past. Obvious statements, but I think so often we overlook the power of the present where everything actually happens. So by choosing to be more patient now, I have effectively accomplished my goal of being a more patient person. Now, my girlfriend brought up a good point earlier. I'll reframe this a different way. Your goal is to be a flosser. You want to be someone who flosses, because that's probably harder than anything you could aspire to be. You want to be a flosser, right? So tomorrow morning you floss. Based on what I just said, that would mean that you are now a flosser. Like if I floss right now, based on what I just said, I've accomplished my goal. I'm a flosser. However, if I were to floss today because I have a dentist appointment tomorrow, and the dentist is like, hey man, do you floss? And I just go in there like, dude, you have no idea how much I floss. I am a flosser. Knowing damn well that the only time I did in the past year was yesterday, I think that's taking it a little too far. So it's not that I think what I said was inaccurate. It's just that it all depends on the framing. Because if you go down that rabbit hole, if you floss 10 times, are you a flosser? If I floss for the entire month of August, am I a flosser? That also comes with, well, what if somewhere along the way, let's say I do really good and it becomes automatic and brushing my teeth is not done until I floss and I don't have to think about it. Then you might say, okay, you're a flosser now. What happens if I miss a day? Is it all for nothing? Did I just screw up the plan? Is the goal no longer valid? Am I no longer a flosser because I missed a day? So that's the other side of the coin of doing it for one day and calling yourself the thing. I would say no. And I think that might be part of the analysis paralysis if you were to lay out a whole list of goals, of self-improvement goals of what you want to be, what you want to change, where if you fall off the train at any point in time along the way, I think maybe we're scared of that, and we think 100% is the only way that we can actually become what we want to become. But I don't think it works like that either. I think if you in the beginning, to make any change in the beginning, it's going to take repetitions, and you have to choose to change. You have to choose those new reactions or those new behaviors because they're new to you. And that's how you learn anything. You choose it, I think, in the beginning. At any given time, you can fall off. You can miss it. You can, quote unquote, fail. But I think you need to bake that in. I think you need to expect that when you embark on whatever it is you're trying to do. Question up front. My girlfriend's here today.
I have a quote that goes with what you're saying that I just opened my book to.
We have a quote. Would you like me to reiterate the quote as you read it to me?
You can read it.
Oh, I can read it.
I marked it.
I would love to read it. I'm going to finally get going on this as well. Come on, Pete. Don't let me down. It smells good. It's definitely strong. Please. Wrestling with the coffee maker.
Where should I?
Set her down.
That's the start. That's the finish.
Okay. A relevant quote. For such a fragmented person, I experiences everything as external. As Robert, do not know how to pronounce that last name, Zen and the art of motor maintenance describes. He is here, but he is not here. He rejects the here, is unhappy with it, and wants to be farther up the trail. When he gets there, however, he will be just as unhappy, because then it will be here. What he's looking for, what he wants is all around him, but he doesn't want that simply because it is all around him. Every step is an effort, both physically and spiritually, because he imagines his goal to be external and distant. For wholeness, the goal is internal and effortless. It is being home with one's homegrown myths and rituals, not merely experiencing I in relation to it, but being it. And that quote was from The Art of Serenity by T. Byram. Not sure if you can read that or not. T. Byram. T-B-Y-R-A-M. Shockingly relevant to our conversation today. The Art of Serenity. Very nice. So, this begs probably 1,000 different questions. Is there a difference between choosing a new behavior, so choosing to be patient, and being patient? Is there a difference between if you know somebody who's like, man, nothing shakes them. You know, they never get agitated. They never make you feel rushed. They never look rushed. They never look distressed. If you knew they were choosing that actively every moment that they felt the urge to be impatient, would you view them differently than someone who can do it automatically? You know, would you consider them to be faking it or not authentic, or, you know, he's not a patient person, he's making himself be that way? Is there a difference? Is there a difference in those things? Or is only what matters the result that you put out into the world? Because I also believe, you know, we are not our thoughts. We are not anything that happens internally. We are our actions. We are what we display. So I think all of that is just part of being a reasonable human being. You know, this is why some people act on their impulses and turn out to be homicidal, for example, where maybe they get pissed off in traffic. You see all these videos, people get pissed off in traffic and they get out of their car and they, you know, people have killed people over road rage, right? I think we all feel things. I'm not saying like we're all resisting killing other people all the time, but I am saying that there's a gap between thought and action. So I view my goal of being a more patient person as being achieved every time I choose patience. I don't have a running tally in my head of, okay, this year if I crush it and I am patient 15 times more than I was last year, then I can consider myself a patient person. I can say that about myself. I don't view it that way. Instead, you are what you want to be by being it. And that sounds like a circular sentence that doesn't necessarily make sense, but it's almost oversimplified. It's like, shouldn't there be more to it than that? I don't think so. I do think there's nuance where you can be on the path to that ideal version of yourself. You can have self-awareness that, okay, I'm still new at this new thing. But each time you actively choose that new behavior, that's the only way you get there anyway. That's the only way you get to that finish line, is by making those new decisions. You know, nothing changes if nothing changes. Like, I'm a quote machine right now, but it all rolls into the same idea. So I think those wins in the present of noticing what your response used to be or would have been and choosing the better one instead, I view that as an accomplishment of that goal, that portion of that ideal self right then and there. I wouldn't say it's mastery if that's your goal, but the reason why I'm pointing this out is because I think it's easy to discount those small events because the goal is this big. Not this big. This is what the present looks like. And I'd also say that nothing exists in a vacuum, meaning this future self that you're aspiring to be, you know, you're also a product of your environment and the stimulus around you at any given moment. So you might have these ideals about, you know, you can visualize, well, here's how ideal me would respond to, you know, adversity or what have you. Well, you're making that decision. You're making that, you know, you're painting that picture without any input. Where the present is full of the real. It's full of the emotion. You might be having an off day, for example, and you don't even know why. And now being that patient person is 10x harder than it was the day before for no reason. So I think that just furthers my point of how valuable the present is and why it's what matters most. Have plans, have ideas, have goals, but also know that that ideal future self doesn't actually exist, or that future self is not something that's just going to come to you. It's not, nobody's coming. So interestingly enough, if we stop chasing that dragon, that ideal self, if we stop putting that up on a pedestal and look up at it and instead break it down into, even if you don't have words for it, but you can picture a quote unquote better version of yourself. If you can break that down into, okay, well, how will that version of me act? How would that version of me respond to being uncomfortable or whatever it is? It's breaking that ideal person down into actionable bits and pieces. And those are the things you do in the present moment in some form. So then instead of waiting for, I guess, waiting to be saved by that future person or waiting to cross some imaginary finish line, now that you've broken it down, all of a sudden you're making 1, 2, 5, 10, 15, 20 different little decisions on a day-to-day basis, and doing it long enough, some of them become automatic, and without you really knowing it, you are that person. I can think of examples for myself where if I don't take a minute to think about it, you don't feel the change, I think is the call out. You don't feel the change as it's happening. Life only makes sense in reverse and in retrospect. I don't feel it happening now. But the more you can be aware of what those different little decisions and qualities are, the more you can take action on them now, and the more you can measure it, the more you can be aware of the change that's happening. Because I don't necessarily feel it, but you can quantify it that way. And the other part of that is, a lot of time, maybe only speaking for myself, you might think the present you is all bad, or there's, maybe, I think we focus too much on the change and forget about what's already good. There's a lot of power in that too. What's already good? I think what clicked for me is just an alleviation of the pressure of chasing an idea. I think the other thing I've noticed and will say is if there's things you want to improve or change, it's reasonable to assume that that's not going to be comfortable. So, for example, if you say, I'm going to just keep using the same example of patience. If you keep saying, I want to be more patient, well, guess what that's going to require? Moments where you need to be patient. And guess what that means? It's probably not a comfortable moment. So there's almost this assumption that, well, the better version of me would handle these things easier, or would just be able to take it, would be able to handle it better than I can right now. Well, you're forgetting that version of you is you. And although I do fully believe you can make these improvements and become an improved version of your current self, I don't think the friction goes away. Certain parts of it may become easier, but just because you're capable of, of these new things, that doesn't mean that the input goes away. Life still gets a vote. And that's where giving yourself grace along the journey comes into play, where if you have a slip up or you have a moment, it doesn't derail the entire plan. If anything, that's more information for you to learn. It's another notch in the belt. It's another thing in your toolkit. It's another thing for you to lean on for the next difficult juncture. Something to use to your advantage next time. So, good, bad, you crushed it, you messed up. It's all required. It's all necessary. It's the same thing as no day without night. There's no patience without the friction. So be wary of that trap of thinking the better version of myself will have an easier time. It could be the opposite. And the fact that it's the opposite could be what makes that version of you better to begin with. Better implies, in my opinion, better implies more. Better implies having more capability, which typically means the amount of friction increases. It's the stimulus. Friction is the stimulus. So don't expect comfort. Not that it won't be there, but don't expect that because you're so much more capable that everything is easier. Again, it could be the opposite. You could be more capable because things are actually more difficult. But it all works together in harmony simultaneously. And by not discounting the small wins, I don't even call them small wins, by not discounting the wins in the present because you haven't, quote unquote, reached that finish line yet, I think is to miss the point entirely. I think you are that version of yourself by doing those things now. So all that to say, it would seem you are what you aspire to be by doing the things that version of you would do now, by doing them now. It doesn't have to be the final form of these actions or these traits, but by carrying out some version of them now in the present, where the only timeline where you can take action, that's would seem to be the only path there. And by focusing on that, I think it helps alleviate the pressure that I think many of us put on ourselves to be more, to be better, when, you know, I would argue the vast majority we're pretty good right now. And I think by choosing these things now, in some form or another, we are exactly what we want to aspire to be, in some form. But I want to know what you guys think. I'd love to hear some feedback in the comments, or if you join the Discord, for example, plenty of places to discuss these things, form new questions, new ideas that you'd like to hear me yap about. And hopefully somewhere along the way I made some sense or provoked some thoughts of your own that maybe you can take and apply. Pick one thing you want to be better at in your day-to-day, personality-wise, whatever. Pick one thing and be hyper aware of it today, tomorrow. Make a new choice and see where that leads you. That's all I have for today. Everybody, thank you for listening, watching. Again, please join our Discord. Shoot me an email, everydaycafequestions@proton.me. Happy to read them and feature them on the next episode. And if you wouldn't mind, if you enjoyed your time here, please subscribe to the show. Helps me out immensely. Drop a like, share with your friends. If it helped you, send it to someone else. Maybe it'll help them too. We'll see you in the next one.